Item 1 on the agenda is approval on the minutes, and there was a correction that was pointed out. Page 3 of the minutes, where it says the chair would like to take a recommendation. Commissioner Jackson then made a motion to deny, seconded by Commissioner Jackson. It's a typo. It should be just a typo. So a motion to approve the minutes with that correction, unless there's others.
I'll second it.
Sam's got the motion. Steve's got the second on the corrected minutes, as we just discussed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. That carries. We took care of the minutes and we fixed the thing. So we're all set. Public hearings. There's one on public hearing tonight, and then we have a series of things on item for discussion that we'll get to in a bit. So the public hearing this evening is approving a zoning tax amendment to allow cannabis business in certain zoning districts. And we go to Harry Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, let me get you.
Here we go. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, so the request in front of you is for a ordinance change to allow cannabis zoning districts. If you all familiar, or if you all remember, we're a little familiar with this from our last planning commission meeting during the work session part of that meeting. So I won't go too far in depth, but for those in the public as well as those that might be watching at home, the city of Faribault is reviewing some zoning text amendments in order to allow cannabis businesses within certain zoning districts as permitted or by right uses, in some cases conditional. And then there's also a few other changes, such as adding some definitions that are part of the Office for Cannabis Management template ordinance that they recommend new ordinances include, and the City Council has already recommended a 250-foot setback from schools. So those are all kind of wrapped up within this particular request. Like I had mentioned, Council had suggested broad sections of zoning districts to allow certain cannabis businesses, with some recommendations based off of the Office for Cannabis Management template ordinance. This is more of a in-depth, nuanced look from staff's perspective, and sort of that recommendation coming from that nuanced look. Hey, this cannabis business is a little similar to this business, which isn't allowed in certain zoning districts, but this business is similar to this other business, and so it makes sense to be in this. What this is not including is any regulation on consumption. There's no policies or testing for law enforcement. We're not regulating anything outside of the zoning code. This is just land use. And there are no other additional regulations that are proposed by staff at this point. And this is just for the zoning code. Now, there are licensing codes that are going to be adopted. That's by a whole separate thing. We don't even talk about that. So that's purely City Council. So first part of the request is some new definitions. The full list of definitions are in your packet. I'm not going to go through it bit by bit. The second sort of bit to this zoning text amendment is the school setback, and it's 250 foot. This is the only setback that Council is recommending. And so what we're doing is being a little bit more specific about it, being measured from building to building. We feel like that this is consistent with doing this in other sections of the code, doing it from building to building, and it makes it a bit clearer to people. Okay, you know, if you have a school on a giant piece of property, giant parcel, and you try to put a cannabis business within 250 feet of that parcel, that's okay. It's still 250 feet away from building itself. To get a little bit more nuanced in terms of each of the individual cannabis businesses, so here's the recommendation from Council, which we saw last time during our work session. For the proposal from staff, from myself, you know, just being a little bit more specific about where cultivation is going to be allowed. So cultivation, from staff's perspective, we think that it makes sense as a limited production and processing unit or use, which we've already allowed within code with some great success downtown. 10,000 Jobs comes to mind. Crybaby Craig's comes to mind. People being able to reuse existing spaces in order to do cultivation. So something that might be like hydroponics, might be like an indoor greenhouse sort of situation, where it doesn't make sense to C1. You don't find any other similar use like that. Limited use in production and processing is not allowed in C1. You also don't see farms in C1 as well, or greenhouses. Additionally, you don't see those kinds of uses allowed in public institutions. For manufacturing or sort of processing a product, whether it's hemp or cannabis, council's kind of recommending these districts, but being a little bit more nuanced about it. Again, where the limited production and processing is, we think that it also makes sense. But where we don't have manufacturing or processing for a product like this, we don't have it in any of our special districts, and we don't have it in C1. So we're not recommending those. When it comes to wholesale and distribution, council's recommendation is like this. We're being a little bit more nuanced about it. Wholesale and distribution is actually a conditional use permit in the central business district, so we're wanting to align that, be consistent, and it's also a use that's not allowed in C1, so we're not recommending. For retail and delivery, the only difference from what council is looking at is that liquor stores, which we feel like is the most similar business to this in terms of regulation and in terms of impact, and so we're looking at this as a similar business, and it's not allowed in C1. For transportation, most of our trucking businesses are going to be located in industrial zoning districts, so that's where it makes the most sense when we talk about a transportation or trucking business for cannabis locating themselves. You just don't see that in any of our commercial districts. So from a comp plan perspective, we feel like that there are a lot of policies and guiding principles within the comprehensive plan that support allowing cannabis businesses in various different parts for a zoning code. And so we do feel like that this is consistent with the comprehensive plan. From a zoning perspective, the criteria that we're using in order to adopt different cannabis businesses within certain zoning districts is by using similar uses to what's already allowed in that zoning district. So it's also meeting a lot of those zoning criteria. Additionally, the DNR does support all of our suggestions because a lot of the uses that are similar are exactly what's already existing in those zoning districts. So in cases where we're adding cannabis, say retail, to a certain zoning district and it's a conditional use in the land, DNR supports that because it's just like every other use within that. So a little bit of DNR support there, but generally we feel like this is meeting a lot of the criteria, and the DNR doesn't oppose the changes. So we are recommending that you approve the ordinance and recommend that to City Council for certain cannabis businesses and zoning districts, for the new definitions as well as the new setback.
Got it. Thank you. Before we go forward, I'm just going to walk through the members of the audience have been through now a couple of meetings, but I'm going to repeat the process. We'll ask any clarifying questions to Harry. Once we get our questions answered, we'll go out to the public. You've been through the thing, come up, name, address, represent, whatever. At some point, we'll shut down the public input. We'll come back up here, have a discussion, make a motion to do something, and then that recommendation goes forward to the City Council. Do we have questions? I do, but I don't want to go first. All right. Go ahead, Bart.
So But if we're should consider get out in the yard that they're not.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Sure. So, we could, you could craft a motion in order to sort of change that wording from instead of building wall to building law, be a property line to building wall or property line to property line. You could do that. I think from staff's perspective, what we're responding to is council's recommendation on that. So, generally, I think that they're not interested in a lot of regulation on cannabis businesses. This is the only thing that they're being specific about in terms of this setback from school buildings to cannabis businesses. And so, kind of reading into that, looking how we have it elsewhere within code, my response from that was like, okay, well, what if we just made it simple, building wall to building wall? So that's kind of the reasoning behind that. As for specifically what council was looking for with that 250-foot setback, based off of talking to the city clerk, thought that it made sense to do building to building. She was in a lot of those meetings. Admittedly, I was not. But in your recommendation going forward, you can say property line to property line or property line to building, whichever works. I think that you make a really good argument, so I could see it.
So we can pick that discussion up in a bit.
Great question, Mr. Chair. I think the city council has been talking about this for well over a year. I don't know how many. I would not. I say that this is a recommendation from planning and zoning. So planning commission is required to take a look at any changes to the zoning code. Even if council doesn't want planning commission to review it, it has to by our codes. I think even by state statute in some cases. There needs to be a public hearing for it. So, I'm not going to say whether, this is or it isn't. I think either way, this is a requirement that it has to go. So it's providing you an opportunity to make changes to the recommendation.
Now I'll jump in on my two questions. In no particular order. I'll dovetail on the 250. More of refreshing my memory. What else in the code would have this type of setback? I seem to remember a discussion a few years ago. Pawn shops.
Pawn shops do. Yes.
Pawn shops do. I remember a very heated discussion back in the late 90s on entertainment districts. And I think at the time we ended up not doing it and we addressed it through zoning districts. So I'm just trying to get my head around, other than pawn shops, is there anything else that's got the 250?
Sure, that's a great question. Let me do a quick search and see what I can find.
Okay, while you're doing that, then the other one's a lot easier, maybe in the same search. There was, in your presentation, there was something on one of the options being allowed in a TUD district. Historically, we hardly allow anything in a TUD. So I'm just kind of, again, refresh my memory, what is allowed in a TUD?
Yeah, and honestly, that's a really good question because I myself, since starting here, have tried to figure out exactly what a TUD district is supposed to be for, and it seems like it's a holding district.
I was going to say maybe I can answer it. That how the city of Faribault has used transition urban development as long as I've been around is if property is annexed into the city, it comes in as TUD, and it may sit there a month, it may sit there a year, it may sit there 10 years, but it's in essence kind of an urban reserve is maybe the more practical naming on it. And I know Dave Weinberg and I had a discussion 5 years ago, but when we were going through the comp plan, maybe it was time to match up how it's actually So that's why it just, I'm not trying to throw a wrench in this, but it just struck me as odd that we'd allow anything in a TUD. It just comes in as an urban reserve and then we switch it to the use.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, so that's a slightly easier question for me to answer, just because, and I do have it pulled up here. So under the TUD district, agricultural uses, farms, not including commercial feedlots, that's permitted by right. Nurseries and tree farms, permitted by right, and wildlife and game refuges. Looks like playgrounds, public and private parks as well. So it kind of is almost a hold
Yep.
in a way. You could potentially, someone out there can try to argue that a bunch of greenhouses or potentially like a nursery of some sort. And so that's why I think even from the DNR didn't have, for example, in the shoreland district, allowing cultivation facility.
Thank you. That actually, you did answer my question. So there's a world where something could go into a TUD district that would sort of look like a greenhouse. Okay, you've answered it. Ed?
Couple of questions. I'm a little bit piggyback on Barter a little bit. Is it going to be the city council that is going to decide how many locations within the city limits?
Mhm.
Who's going to be responsible for inspecting the facilities? Is that going to be the city or is that the state? One owner own more than one facility.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, so these are good questions, none of which I am the authority on it. So I think the city clerk last time did speak to some of those questions. I don't know if there is going to be a limit or who exactly is inspecting them. I think the idea is that if the city takes over the licensing and location requirements for cannabis businesses, that they will be the ones inspecting it. Although, again, I'm not sure. I'm not the one making those rules. But I'm trying to recall exactly what the city clerk last time responded with. But as far as I recall, I don't recall city council putting a limit on the number. I believe that the city will be doing the inspection.
Really, what I'm saying is, he talked about the 250, whether it's building, property line. It really falls in the same category. Rules and regulations or guidelines. Who's going to own it? Where they're located? I know we're here talking about zoning.
Yeah.
I guess our job is to okay zoning, period, and then let it go, is what I'm
Yeah.
Well, the state is pretty vague. The city, in my understanding,
Yeah, the state legislature in the rules that they've set up for it, rules and regulations, set up, I think it's like a minimum number or something like
well,
that.
they talk
Yeah.
about population. I'm sorry, talk about
Right.
city or whatever it may be, plus or minus that, or whatever you want to do. Same thing with multiple ownership. True, I guess, as long as it's zoning, but the question.
Are we done with questions? So I can go out and do the public hearing and then come back and we can pick up the discussion from there. Stick a pin in it for now. We'll officially open up the public hearing. If any member of our public has anything that you want to add. You've heard a lot of checking the boxes tonight. This is how I have to do it, that we've opened the public hearing. I have given the opportunity. If there's no one from the public, we'll close public hearing. Now, back up here for discussion. Maybe I usually don't go first, but I just want to close the loop where I was going with the 250. I find those radiuses really onerous to manage. I'm just not a fan of that radius stuff. And an example would be, I mean, we'll use cannabis since we're talking about it, but one cannabis business A goes into the downtown business district and is open and is doing fine. A year or two later, somebody comes in and buys a downtown building. opens up a charter school. The 250-foot bubble then makes it harder for cannabis business number 2 to come in. And there's just all sorts of scenarios. And staff, as we've seen, week after week here, you guys are really kind of outgunned and outmanned right now. You don't need to be running around town with a yardstick measuring 250 feet, whether it's from the building or the property line. I think you raise an excellent point. I'm not challenging what you've said. I'm just not a fan of the 250-foot radius. That's where I'm coming from on it. And I really like that basically this gives the city council what they were looking for, except for C1, which just makes it more consistent. Usually I don't go first, but that's just where I was at. Other discussion.
No.
Sam. Other discussion. Steve.
Chairman, I think the staff has done a great job of laying this out and with the charts and descriptions. I'm comfortable with this and I move for approval as what staff has put on there.
Is there a second? Sam's got the second. So the ordinance approving zoning tax amendment to allow cannabis businesses as presented. We've got the motion. We've got the second. Is there discussion on it before we vote?
I would like to bring up that I still feel that we're still talking about an while I'm not against substance, I still think there should be some more rules like we do have with alcohol, just because we should treat them similarly. And again, it's just because we need similarly so that way we're protecting the community at large. And I still think that the city council has been a little light-handed on this one. So that's just my feelings on this discussion.
Ed.
Here's why I asked the questions I did. Approving the zoning, no guidelines.
Other-
Mr.
Well, the question is how many we're going to have, hours and locations.
We'll go to Steve.
Retrospect of what you're saying, again, we're just talking that they can put it into this.
Agreed.
And we have no say with the regulations. That's not our job tonight. Our job tonight is to simply say it can be in this location. Council, state is going to set up things. It's just like, we've never had, when we've approved, let's say, a liquor store to be someplace or be there, we don't do anything with regards to the regulations of that liquor store. We just say it could be in this area. That's where I'm looking at. Shouldn't look beyond that at all.
Ed, go ahead.
And I do agree that this really, I'll disagree a little bit, I think, I'm right. It's not the state's going to set the regulations, it's going to be the city council or city of Faribault. Totally agree. My concern is what the guidelines going to be after it's approved. I feel like
Well,
Mr. Chair?
Harry,
see what you're doing.
and then we're going to
I
go to Bart.
appreciate it.
Harry and then Bart.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, so I'm searching everywhere within our code, and I'm now realizing that, I don't know if I was talking to the city clerk and we just had it wrong or what. So looking at how liquor stores are permitted, it is measured from lot line to lot line. So, I could see something where, and really, it wasn't that city council specifically said it had to be building. We could easily do something.
Thank you. Then Bart's got the floor, and then Sam. Okay.
first, since I've had.
I already know where you're going, but
To matching your amendment.
So that's now the motion. I don't think we need to amend it or do anything. Clearly, the person that made the motion, the person that made the second, are just clarifying that they would like that language to be 50 feet from property line. Lot line to lot line. Okay, to match the. Got it.
What we have to say.
Got it. Okay, so we're all clear on what the motion is and motion and the second. Thank you both for that. And
Oh, one more
go
clarifying
ahead.
question. Are we including, if this is your motion, I don't want to railroad it, but to clearly match up with liquor store, it says measured from lot line to lot line of any school or church, except if the licensed establishment is located in the downtown commercial district. Can we match that language verbatim?
Mr. Chair, I mean, this is completely up to the motion maker. If we include churches, it becomes a bigger discussion that, you know, I don't know if council is going to go for that. They've just
Got it.
called out schools.
Got it. So just making sure I got it clear. Steve's got the motion. Second, that we're matching the 600, no, excuse me, the 250-foot language on lot line to lot line. And actually, Harry's research and this conversation picked up my vote that as long as we're matching what we're doing with liquor stores, fine. I just didn't want this weird carve out on the 250. Now that it's matching what we're doing for liquor stores, that picked up my vote. I'm fine with that. The final thing is I'm not wrapping my head around what the city council wants. I don't care if they met, and I appreciate your question, but whether they met once or 15 times, we're a recommending body to them. Yeah, they had to get their head around it and everything else, but 2 of the 7 served on this board. The other 5 know nothing about land use. So I don't care what the recommendation was. We've done a good job of working through this. And we've got this to a good spot. I've got a motion. We'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. That motion carries 5-0. City Council next Tuesday, Harry?
Actually, this will be delayed a little bit. So this will actually go to a city council work session, I believe, beginning in October.
Got it.
I think it's October 1st,
But we're done with it now.
but we are done with it.
And the City Council will have it at a future date. All right, moving on. Request to be heard. Is there anything there, or can I jump into the items for discussion?
Mr. Chair, you can jump right ahead.
Jumping in, 5A, denying the variance 15 3rd Avenue Southwest. This was continued from 2 weeks ago.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So the item in front of you, I'll skip forward, you know, just because we're all familiar with the request. Basically, the update is that the applicant did provide a reference survey that it kind of somewhat showed at the last meeting. That is now actually within your packet, as well as a few additional items. The new documents don't change staff's review of the proposal. We still don't feel like that there's enough there in terms of meeting criteria to be granted a variance. So we're still recommending denial of the variance based off.
Got it. Thank you. Do we have questions for Harry before we go to the public? We'll open it up. Public input. Anything to add for us?
Corey Newby, 15 3rd Avenue Southwest. With it is before I was at. You guys just talked about setbacks. Back I am. What the city staff is looking at is yes, I can fit my maximum 50 spots for my first floor of the property. So I believe that's about 16,000 square feet. I have 42,000 square feet worth of property that I have split up into phases, phase a 3-year and then a 5-year. I set those goals in phases so I can achieve them. I plan on achieving those way greater than way sooner than 3 years or 5 years. So my big thing is I will not be able to fit my required off-street parking if I don't get now for first floor of the school, I can fit my needed spaces. As soon as that starts producing income, I'm putting an elevator in there for second floor, and hopefully the basement. So right now my parking needs pretty big concern with not having setbacks was overhanging cars into the right of way. A 2.5-foot setback eliminates that. Unless I got a pretty big vehicle. But with me being next to residential, I am also required to have fencing around the parking lot. So any fencing will prevent any overhang into the right of way. So I'm hoping we can come to some form of agreement, because if I have to put 10-foot setbacks in this year, and then next year I have to file for a variance to hopefully put my blacktop back in there to fit full cars, it doesn't make much sense. And the way I look at it, I've always stood on the vision of 2040, talk about historic properties, business, being flexible. Even the site plan talks about the need to be flexible. And we talk about we need to follow the rules, and that's what these variances are for. So our ordinance is kind of like our business plan. Business plans are made to be changed, but your core principles and values should always remain the same. And the vision to 2040 is your core value, your guidelines. So I would like some support and some flexibility with those setbacks. The other one we were talking about was for the curbing. So Mr. Salt's not here today, but he brought up, why are we still using this PDF from when I first started? I had submitted a second one February 6th. So now I'm 4 months back. The significance is that they asked, how do you have proof that there'll be drainage issues? So what I was saying last time with that is, the drainage issues were brought up by your guys' city engineer, not for me saying it. From the city engineer, not from me saying it. From the city engineer. So my second site plan was actually denied, or not having that in place. A couple other items as well. Since then, we've met, we have talked about ribbon curbing, but the problem is ribbon curbing would get me to hit code. But the problem is they didn't like that cars can still drive over the ribbon curbing. It doesn't really stop anything. So then what's the purpose of having the curb then? If a ribbon curb could be put in there, again, it's just one more strain, one more thing. And I know money can't be everything, but time, money, and knowledge are the three biggest resources of a small business, and I'm trying to get knowledge from you guys. I'm trying to save time. I'm trying to save money. I've been setback 4 months for this. I'm hoping we can come to some flexibility with the 2.5-foot setback, and it's still going to be hard for me. I still might have some leeway for the next couple years to grow. And again, before I looked at this property, I was looking at TIF properties in Owatonna, and as much as I'd hate to say it, if I can't continue to grow, if I can't continue to utilize this property, I can't spend money on fixing it up and repairing it if it's not going to make me any money at the end of the day. So I don't want to see it become a TIF property. I want it to be part of the community, and all I'm asking is for some flexibility with those setbacks. The other one we were talking about was for the curbing. So be hard for me. I still might have to come back and try to file for another variance down the road. But I would like this variance so I know I have some leeway for the next couple years to grow. And again, before I looked at this property, I was looking at TIF properties in Owatonna. Following those guidelines. We're paying a third party to maintain that vision to 2040, so we should be utilizing that.
Got it. That's it for public input. Up here to the Planning Commission. Discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Steve?
I've heard the 2.5 feet. So we're saying that it would be 7.5 feet would be the setback?
No, Mr. Chair, I think the request would be to go up to 2.5 feet. So the variance would actually, instead of 10 feet, be 7.5.
So it's a 7.5 foot variance. Part of me has some, I drive past this property and this property is not being maintained. I mean, nobody's mowing it. It's like a weed farm up there. For a main arterial street going past it, I've got concerns about what this is going to look like in the future. Part of me is got some real concerns about giving variances. We're talking quite a variance from 10 feet to 2.5 feet. Very nervous about that.
Other discussion? I'll hop in on a couple of things. I do think we probably just need to get this off our plate tonight one way or another. And like I said 2 weeks ago, we've been really cooperative and creative over the years on old churches, and we get it. This is a bridge too far with these 0, or even now a 7.5 foot variance, but I wasn't in favor of going from a C1 to C2. Obviously, that's the direction. I would, at this point, I would be in favor of. I would support a motion to deny. But I think the key is, and what's nice is there's 5 of us tonight. So one way or another, somebody's going to make a motion to do something that's going to move forward. Good with all that. Discussion, thoughts? Yeah.
I really wanted this to work for you. I live a block away. I want a great place that the community can reuse. I want Divine Mercy to be used respectfully. I just think you're asking for too much. But I support you. But I think that there's a better way to make this happen.
For a
So, unless anyone has any other comments, I would make a motion to deny this variance.
second?
I'll second it.
Steve's got the second on the motion to deny the variance as presented. Was there any discussion, comments? Bart, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, so I think we're talking about like a shared parking agreement. Mr. Chair, we do have provisions within our code that do allow that. It might be a conditional use. I'm trying to recall exactly. Like there needs to be a balance between businesses and when they intend to use that parking lot, and when business that is on that lot would be operating. So it would need to match up. So if things happen on the weekend, you know, and there's nothing happening at the school, maybe that works out. I think at the same time, you know, if we do have something where there are times that conflict between the school and the use, at the end of the day, that Bethlehem Academy, which I think is kind of what you're referring to, the property just to the south. I'm just trying to clarify which property. So Bethlehem Academy, it would be up to them, but at the same time, they would need to make sure they have the required amount of spaces before they can start giving up additional spaces. So there is a way to do it, yes. It just requires a little bit of calculation.
Other discussion? I've got a motion, I've got a second. We'll vote. Again, I'll just, because to make sure on the double negative stuff. The motion and the second is to deny the variance request. All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. That carries. The key is, and now it moves forward. Is this next week?
Yes, this will be next week.
Okay, thanks. The next one up on items for discussion, the rebound, again, the comp plan amendment, zoning amendment, the 400 block of 20th Street Northwest. Harry, an update.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So you guys are probably familiar with this one. We did spend a little bit of time discussing this at our last meeting, and basically the update for this one is, okay, if we are going to recommend denial of it, that's fine. The requirement based off of state statute as well as our own code is that we have findings to give to city council before it moves forward. So that's kind of why we're back. Based off of the feedback that I got at the last meeting, I put together a set of findings within each of the different resolutions. So the resolution for a comp plan amendment now includes findings that were supplied from you guys, sort of more towards recommending denial of comp plan amendment. And then the ordinance actually changes to a resolution because you can't pass an ordinance to deny zoning map change. You pass a resolution to deny the ordinance, pass a resolution to deny zoning map request. So that has now become a resolution. We are needing to make decisions on both of these resolutions tonight. So with that, based off your recommendation from the last meeting, recommending that you approve the resolution which recommends denial of the comp plan amendment, and then approve the resolution which recommends denial of the zoning map.
Thank you. Do we have clarifying questions? I'll go to the public. Back up here to the Planning Commission. You're going to need two separate motions. Before there's a motion, I will say that one of the most scathing things that was ever said to me was the last opinion you heard was always the most important opinion you heard. I have taken every stand on this one. I drove by this neighborhood yesterday, and there are strong arguments. It's a spot zone, and I hate spot zoning, but that neighborhood seems to be transitioning more residential. It's weird, the ones that trip you up, but I have been all over the map on this one, so I genuinely am looking towards others for leadership and direction on this one. I don't have a good feel.
Mr. Chairman, we had the owner of the scrapyard in here talking about that he'd like to expand that. I know the Rice County Fair Board is looking to utilize, and they have been utilizing, the racetrack area for Mexican rodeos, and there's proposals to do more racing down there, which is not conducive to housing. And I realize they're somewhat landlocked, but I mean, if you're looking at the direction of where that is, it is landlocked, and they've invested a lot in that area. And I could see them even buying for more parking. I mean, there's just a lot of things that go on. So that's my reason for saying no.
Other discussion? I need two motions. So the first one would be on the comp plan amendment, and then the second one zoning map amendment.
Chairman, then I move for approval of the denial of the comprehensive plan amendment.
I will second you.
We've got a motion and a second to deny the comp plan amendment. We're all clear on what the motion is? We'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, no.
No.
That carries 4-1. Now the second one, now the zoning map amendment. Motion.
Okay, then I move for denying the zoning map amendment. Yes. Move for that resolution to be
Yep.
approved.
Got it. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I've got a motion and a second on the resolution to deny the zoning map amendment. Discussion on that? Vote on that? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, no.
No.
That carries 4-1. That's it for items for discussion. Anything routine business, Harry, you got for us?
Mr. Chair, no, and I forgot to put in any planning and zoning updates. So I could cover that now.
Sure, just combine 6 and 7. Go ahead.
Yeah, so just to give you an update, the two items that went forward, actually the three items that went forward to council did pass their first reading. So and actually for the resolution for the 2040, not the Highway 60 plan. So that was adopted. That is now a plan that is in action. Doing some slight amendments to it. I have some particular things that I want consultant to change about it. So just small clerical error fixing. So that is now moving forward. Our plan for Highway 60, the vacation that went through for that Johnson Ryland property out there, that went forward, and then the zoning map amendment, we did amend it so that it was just the water treatment plant going forward instead of the wastewater treatment plant property going forward. Water treatment plant did pass first reading to be so all those are moving forward. Things that are coming up, we actually don't have, we potentially don't have any planning zoning items coming to planning for our next meeting. So one thing that we could talk about would be if there's anything that we do want to try to tackle during the next meeting. We could just talk about it today. We could, you could send me emails as ideas going forward if we don't come up with anything today. Those are all the different options.
Good point to go back and look at the work plan we did at the start of the year and see where we are. Pick up. I'm being this serious. That that was kind of a prioritized list, and pick up the top 2 things on that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we could definitely do that. I think you'll be surprised to see that we haven't got very far on that. I could just tell you that right now. I think part of that is being a one-man show, but I think that we could start talking a little bit more about if there's anything that we wanted to do as a group, where if planning commissioners concept or idea and do some research on it, come back to the group, presentation on it, just so that we could talk about some of this and continue forward. We could do that. And then that way, maybe at the end of it, we do have a planning commission recommendation for zoning text amendment or for zoning map amendment or for any other sort of amendment to the comp plan. We could do that.
This, I think, would follow along land use. And I've talked about this for a long time, and we've not done a damn thing about it. We've talked about affordable housing. And maybe I was looking at it the wrong way, but maybe to come up with where there would be a way if a developer had land and he wants to zone it that way, but we could allow a smaller lot size or do some things that would be able to create some starter homes.
Sam.
Mr. Davis, would it be okay if you resent us that list? It's been a little while, so maybe we could just take a peek, reprioritize. We've kind of seen what's been coming before us. We kind of see where the issues are, and maybe we could just collectively get back to you and let you know.
Sam, that's more eloquent than I was going to say. To just pick up right where you left off. How about if we've got ideas, send them to Harry. Harry and I can get together late this week, early next week, quick phone call, and then kind of see where we want to go.
But that list would be really helpful.
Oh,
A little while.
yeah. So,
And I would agree with you, the list would be helpful because that was right before my time.
yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't even say that part right. But yeah, have Harry and Carrie send the list out to us, as soon as you can tomorrow. Folks can review it, email into Harry. Because again, I'm just trying to, help manage your time. I don't want to throw something at you that's going to take more than you can tackle right now. But if the group's okay with it, get the list out. Everybody look at it. Throw some stuff to Harry, and then Harry and I can decide if we need to meet in 2 weeks or what the agenda looks like. Okay.
Does that work for everyone? Send myself a reminder.
I have no agenda one way or another. Yeah, if it makes sense, we can meet. All right. Okay. Oh, can we ask about the potential vacation of a?
Mr. Chair, you certainly can. I think in the rush to get things done, I wasn't able to put that on the last city council meeting. That will be on the next one. I do have some time here. ways. So we'll see what happens. I'm reaching out to Commissioner Delgado.
That's it for the updates. We need a motion to adjourn. Pam's got the motion. Art's got the second. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.